All right, thank you for staying with us. And the conversation, just like my colleague Evelyn said, it's about the fight against corruption in Nigeria. From right now, we have President Bola Tinubu in charge. But then before him, especially the last administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, he came on the three prongs of anti-corruption, economic revolution and the fight against insecurity. Many persons will say, how much of a success did he make, you know, of those three legs in which he vigorously campaigned and he had a chance to be a leader for this nation for 8 years. And even the man before him, Goodluck Jonathan, in which many persons said he was a corrupt government. And then the ones that pride themselves at anti-corruption government. The leader then, anti-corruption czar, which was President Muhammadu Buhari, how much of corruption did he fight? How much corruption happened under him? Now that we have President Tinubu in charge, what is going on with what we have seen? Some revelations, especially as made in that viral video, an interview, by the man in charge of the presidential committee on, getting back assets of the government
The
chief.
Special Presidential Investigative Panel.
Yeah, thank you. That's Chief Obono-Obla'S in that interview that he had on a podcast that has now really gone viral and that made many revelations that many persons are thinking if President Buhari was really an anti-corruption person, how come these allegations, these things, these damning revelations, activities rather happened under him? This morning, in the course of the program, we take, some excerpts, maybe videos of that particular interview. We have been joined by the Director General at the Heritage Center, Dr. KATCH ONONOJU. He joins us virtually this morning. Good morning, Doctor. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much. Generally speaking, the anti-corruption drive in Nigeria from successive government to what we have right now. I remember former President Buhari at a point, said that if we don't kill corruption, corruption will kill us. And many persons say, yes, corruption is endemic, even till now. But what Chief Obono-Obla'S said in that interview, were you caught aback? Were you surprised? Or you have always known that something untoward was really happened during the 8 years of Muhammadu Buhari?
Well, what Obono-Obla'S said, it's another chapter in what we have had about President Buhari's service. I know very well President Buhari's government, if I should borrow the words of Mr. Ribadu, the National Security Advisor, Buhari's government bankrupted Nigeria. And that's why we are still in the process of the postmortem to actually see how much that bankrupting is. We have seen that financially we were bankrupted, security-wise we were bankrupted, sociologically we were bankrupted. Buhari's weaponization of nepotism, I believe, is at the heart of all this bankrupting that you've seen. Because nobody asked questions, he didn't ask questions, and Nigerians weren't even allowed to say a thing. So that's why some of us welcome President Tinubu's attempt at some quality of forensic interrogation. But I believe, and I say this, President Tinubu is not interrogating corruption enough. If he was, we would not wait to hear from Obono-Obla'S. No, we will hear that President Tinubu is doing something. I am aware that even at the Ministry of Aviation, Festus Keyamo is being reprimanded by people who worked in Buhari's administration and asking him, how dare you allow the probing of Hadi Sirika? Were you not part of that government? And I think the same blackmail is also being pestered around President Tinubu. Were you not part of the APC? How dare you interrogate corruption under the APC administration? But we need to interrogate this, because if President Tinubu seeks to gain our trust, because government is a continuum, he must ask those questions, because what we are talking about is Nigeria's commonwealth. Buhari, without doubt, ran the most corrupt administration in Nigeria's history. It was so corrupt that there were things that we just wouldn't say. As I'm speaking to you today, we have millions of Nigerians across the country living in IDP camps, whereas foreigners are occupying their homes. We must ask these questions. It is corruption for the president to force the army to look the other way, and then foreign terrorists come and take land. And that's why we're having the food security, because the food insecurity is caused due to the absence of capacity on our farmers to have the freedom and security to go into their farms, to farm and also to harvest their crops. Why? Buhari instrumented an arrangement where foreigners who do not speak any Nigerian language, they speak Bambara and French, and they are dominating all our farmlands across Nigeria. This is why I say President Tinubu must take steps to restore those Nigerians who are currently right now headed inside IDP camps as refugees back to their ancestral lands. I say this because this is security. It is the most serious problem in northern Nigeria. Across the middle belt states of Plateau, states like Taraba, states like Benue, states like Niger, states like Kaduna, Nigerians are not at peace, and that's what. So it's not only the financial corruption, but the corruption of the social space. Now, in the terms of financial corruption, thank God you've heard what Obono-Obla'S is saying. Why was this way under Buhari? Anybody who did anything wrong, corruption-wise, was not interrogated. And the absence of this kind of consequences is the reasons they carried on with impunity.
Right.
Look at us. Today we're producing oil, but we're not earning money from oil. President Tinubu is not yet there to ask the dead questions. And that's why we say, why is he not asking these questions that has not taken Obono-Obla'S to come to television to restate? Is it because Tinubu has also been intimidated or blackmailed by those who said, how dare you interrogate corruption? Were you not part of the APC? How dare you interrogate corruption? Were you not part of the government? Tinubu needs to show us that he is not part of the past, even though we also do have questions to ask in the ways that he's been carrying on. One thing I give him, he's been able to give instructions to the security services to attack the terrorists that Buhari previously looked away and allowed them to ransack our country. So it's not only the financial corruption that I complain about, the sociological corruption, the security corruption. The country was bankrupt. I agree with Nuhu Ribadu that Buhari drove Nigeria into bankruptcy and he bankrupted the country. But we now need to look at how bankrupted the country was. It wasn't just financial bankruptcy, it was also sociological and security bankruptcy of our country. So there is a lot of interrogations for us to do if we are to be honest with ourselves and to bring the country to some quality of semblance. Now the leaders can see what's going on in Kenya. For us not to allow the youth to pour onto the streets, because we still have our youth who are right now at the point of despair. Don't say despair to youth. Show them that you are there to fight corruption.
All right, Doctor.
President Tinubu, I demand, must interrogate corruption that took place during the last administration.
All right, very well. And it's interesting to note that beyond the financial corruption, you talked about what happened in the security sector, in which had led us here, especially under the administration of former President Muhammadu Buhari. And in that podcast, that interview, by the chairman of the Special Investigation Panel for the Recovery of Public Property, Obono-Obla'S, that we're talking about. It said so many things. And Doctor, we'll get to the nitty-gritty very shortly, but I allow you and our viewers to have and catch a glimpse of part of what Obono-Obla'S said in that podcast. Can they hold on, Doctor?
What Obono-Obla'S said, he said it in public.
I didn't prompt them from an American law firm saying that they have assets or access to a bank account in Texas that has over 69 billion US dollars, proceeds from stolen crude oil, and the 9 billion, 69. The proceeds from the crude oil is 60 billion. The 9 billion is, they mentioned the name Patrick Aziza, who was National Security Advisor, and I thought it was beyond me, so I wrote to the president that this is what this firm has, alleged. Yes, that they are asking for money. That if we make some payment available, that they will give us the bank, not the holders of the account number, the bank accounts, and so forth and so on. So I went to the president and said, approve, so that we can recover this money. 69 billion, it's a lot of money.
All right, Doctor, sorry for that. I hope you can hear me now. This particular thing that Obono-Obla'S said, he had it. He said some of the things I recovered were returned to the looters. For instance, there was this case of someone from whom I recovered over 80 brand new S-Class Mercedes-Benz, armored plated from Ijabi. I wrote to the DG Customs to ask if the person paid custom duties of the vehicle. He said no, they didn't pay. I wrote to the FRS to know if the person paid tax on the vehicles. He also said no, and that they don't have the records. We went to court to get an order of interim forfeiture, and it was granted pending the hearing of the case. So I sent a memo to Malami, who was the AGF then, to brief him on what we were doing, only for him to tell me that he never mandated me to do things I investigated. Doctor, this is just a part. Is it because that government under the leadership of Muhammadu Buhari was lethargic? Because many persons say maybe he wasn't directly involved, maybe he just allowed so many things to happen under him, part of what we are seeing right now.
Well, it goes back to that issue about nepotism. If you build an administration based on nepotistic selections, they're not going to talk to each other. They will see themselves as members of one gang. It's like, the ladders of nepotism is like a cult. Everybody belongs to that particular cult, and nobody should interrogate. But I think one of the very best ways to also follow those issues of the armored vehicles is to check the office of the National Security Advisor to see if those vehicles had the end user certificates. And then if there were end user certificates for the vehicles, you could then start from there to see if they were actually imported for government use. Because if they were for government use, then they will enjoy the waivers. And that could be where we could start from. If they don't have waivers, or if they do have waivers, look at what was the name.
All right, we'll try and reconnect with Dr. KATCH there, and he was just trying to make a good point that maybe it was a government use. All right, can you hear us, Doctor?
Yes, I can hear you, and that's why I'm saying we need to go to find out if actually those things were supposed to be for government use. If they were supposed to be for government use, then they would have had an end user certificate. And if it had had an end user certificate, it meant we can understand the reasons why they did not pay the custom duties. But of course, it does make sense that whoever does such interrogations and questionings is properly explained to, not just the case abandoned and then...
Doctor, sorry, if I may butt in here, if it's for government use, why will he be kept in a private residence? 80. The man said he went there to retrieve 80, Mercedes-Benz armored plated If it's for government use, shouldn't it be at ministry, secretariats, and offices? Why will it be kept at a private residence? And when he went and memoed the AGF, it was told that it was never mandated to touch those things. How clear was that? How sincere?
Well, you also need to understand that Buhari's administration allowed for private members of the public who were very connected to the government to actually engage in unbridled corruption. We remember the case of the gentleman who passed away called Funtua. Issa Funtua was known to break the law, to do things. If you do your interrogations, you will see a lot of his malfeasance in the financial market, and all those were due to the reason that he had a link and connection to the Buhari administration. A lot of these kind of things happened, and people didn't pay duty. People even engaged in round tripping sanctioned by the Buhari administration. Things happened, and that's why I said there is a need for President Tinubu to interrogate the corruption that took place during the term of President Buhari. If he doesn't do it, if he doesn't try to restore confidence, a lot of questions will be asked about the truth and sincerity of his words. And that's why I say, let us find those vehicles, because the vehicles wouldn't be too far. Whatever it is Obono-Obla'S has gotten, we can still go back, use the documents that he presented that time to reopen investigations and interrogations of those issues. It is not time bad, and we must continue to do that.
All right, Dr. KATCH. Now, talking about the will, you said President Tinubu must have the will to actually interrogate and investigate the corrupt atrocity that actually took place under the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari. But would you say that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has that strong will to go through? They say when there is a will, there is a way. So do you think that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has that strong will to investigate the corrupt atrocities perpetrated under the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, knowing that President Tinubu had sung the praises of President Buhari? He had said that he's going to continue from where Buhari stopped. Do you think that he would actually do what you're saying?
We are begging that he finds the courage to own the will to do the right thing. I am saying that because I have not yet seen him act in ways that I could be situated to agree that Tinubu now has the political will to interrogate corruption under the Buhari administration. No. So all we have gotten from President Tinubu are rhetorics. So away from those rhetorics, we want to see actions. Actions that will situate in our minds that Tinubu has finally gotten the political will to do the right thing. But for now, I will tell you, no, he has not done them yet. Whatever he's doing are piecemeal, and because they are piecemeal, that's why you're seeing people now speak out. Obono-Obla'S speak out about the financial corruption. I am speaking out about the security corruption. Let him try to correct these things. We will hear, we will see, and when we see, I will tell you that yes, he has now gotten the will to do the right thing. But as at this moment, President Tinubu does not seem yet to have the political will to interrogate corruption in a way that we can see things return back to normal in Nigeria.
You don't consider the investigation that went down in the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, the will. You do not see the appointment of a special investigator to probe the CBN, that's in the person of Jimo Bazi, a strong will. You do not see the suspension of as Minister of Humanitarian Affairs,
Betty.
Dr. Betty Edu, a strong will of President Tinubu showing that he really wants to deviate from the norm.
I commended him at the time of the suspension of Betty Edu. I commended President Tinubu on television at the time of bringing in Sadia Farouk Omar. I commended him when Halima Shehu was removed from office. But I also put my eyes on the ball to see what happens after then. Since after then, we've not had a thing. We've not had a thing. So it is not just to publicly mount the rhetorics, but it's also good to let the public see actions follow through. Rhetorics are not just good enough. Actions are the ones that speak louder than the rhetorics that we've been getting from President Tinubu. We want him to do more. We want the Nigerians who are currently now being kept in IDP camps to be restored back to their villages. That is what will secure food on Nigerians' table. You can hear the cost of tomatoes. It's because the farmers cannot go in. What is holding Tinubu from removing those who we know coming from Mali, from Central African Republic, but are today occupying lands that belong to Nigerian farmers, and those farmers are currently, as I'm talking to you, inside IDP camps. For him to close his eyes to that, that in itself is condoning corruption. It is not only financial corruption that brings unease all over the Middle Belt, from Katsina, Zamfara, Sokoto, Taraba, Niger State, Plateau State. As I'm talking to you, Nigerians are being killed in Plateau, in Mangu, in Bokos, in Riom, in Barkin Ladi. What are we doing? Yes, I appreciate the fact that he has given a warning to the soldiers to repel them, but let him remove those foreigners on Nigerian lands and bring the Nigerians out of the IDP camps and put them back there and secure their farms. That way, they will start to go back to farms. That way, our food will start becoming cheaper in the market. That way, Nigerians will have tomatoes to buy. You need to understand the correlation between these actions and non-actions to food security. And that's why I insist, even though we're talking about the financial corruption, we also have to correct the security corruption that occurred under Buhari, when security officers and commanders were asked to look the other way, whereas foreigners rampage Nigeria everywhere. That, for me, is a far more important thing than the stories about financial corruption. Security comes first. If you don't have security, nothing can happen well in any society. And that's why I ask, restore Nigerian farmers all over the north who are right now languishing in IDP camps as refugees, restore them back to their ancestral lands, to their villages, and secure so that people who are in places like Sapana, in Basari, in Dutchema, in Kankara, in Musa, in Maru, in Kwaterekwasi, in Dangobe, in Ensadau, in Malele, people in places like Riom, Barakin Ladi, Bokos, Miangu can go back to their farms and be secured as Nigerians. If he cannot do that, those in Benue, over 400,000 people in Benue are today in IDP camps. Why should that be so? Why should Nigerians not be secured? President Tinubu should understand, we're not just talking about the financial corruption, we're talking about the security corruption. General Tuwai Danjuma was right. Soldiers were colluded, and that to me is corruption. Let him do things to correct that nonsense.
All right, Dr. Katch, seems you are more passionate about the insecurity in the land as to, the financial corruption. There have been calls recently for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to sack some of his security chiefs. Do you buy into that? Do you think it has to do with those are the aims of the security affairs in the nation, or it's just us doing what they need to do? Do you think it's beyond the security chiefs? Do you buy into the calls that some of the security chiefs should be dismissed?
Yes, a lot of them should be dismissed, because it is not just normal that we civilians will have access to this security intelligence. When Governor Ganduje was begging that those who come into Nigeria shouldn't be allowed to come in with guns, Buhari allowed them to come in. Why? Buhari wanted to recreate Lebanese history in Nigeria. Don't forget, it was when the Palestinian refugees were coming in to Lebanon that, unchecked, was when Lebanon now converted from being a Maronite Christian majority country to a Muslim majority country. And that's why you're seeing right now at the National Assembly, when they're talking about the ranching bill, somebody like Senator Borau says that the people who are spread across the bushes of Nigeria do not know their villages. They don't know their towns. They don't know their states. He's right. They would not know because they are not Nigerians. They don't speak Hausa, they don't speak English, they speak Bambara, they speak French. I blame President Buhari for not handling that security team well. And that's for you to know this. Those security officers that kept their eyes elsewhere, most especially General Buratai and those under him, they knew what was going on. They knew that these were not Nigerians. And I complained on television that the right thing for Buhari to do was to take seriously the 2015 peace agreement in Mali and be able to settle in a way the refugees do not fall into Nigeria. No. What did Buhari do? Buhari announced free arrival, free visa for anybody coming into Nigeria. And what happened? Our security people looked the other way and they came in. And what did you have? Places in Kaduna, industrial scale ethnic cleansing took place. Places like now in Niger State, up to 12 local governments are occupied by those people. Also, the same thing is happening in Benue, in Taraba, in Newman, places like in Adamawa. We have heard about the return of Boko Haram in bombing areas in Goza. But that's not part of the story. What I'm talking about is we're now beginning to feel this food insecurity bite us all over the country. Nigerians cannot buy tomato and other things because why? Farmers are not allowed to go into their farms to do this. Who are the people seeking for this? They are foreigners who seek for land, seek to displace Nigerians using ethnic cleansing as a strategy. Why did the security services keep quiet? All of them that kept quiet and that thing happened. Ask yourself, Sunday Igboho, what was he doing? Sunday Igboho simply was gathering to fight those who came to take over the Oyo Forest Reserve. And that's why Buhari turned upon him. Wherever you stand up to try to secure your land, what will Buhari do? He will send soldiers to go there and dislodge you, indigenous people. Who are they allowing these lands to be kept for? Foreigners. Because there are no Nigerians from Sokoto, Kanu, Jigawa, Katsina, or Zamfara asking to be removed from their homes in the north and to be put anywhere in the south. It is not true. These people are foreigners. And that's why I am telling you people, Buhari wanted to recreate Lebanese history in Nigeria. That's why he was doing that.
All right, Doctor.
That's why he was doing that.
Yeah. And, you know, you have always been a strong critic of the former president, Muhammadu Buhari. But then these things being said under him, you have been talking up seriously about the security dimension, the security corruption that happened under him. But many persons will say that why finger only Buhari in this matter? Because I remember under him as well, but a governor, still a governor now, I think the governor of Bauchi State, when there was, you know, this directive by the governors of the Southwest, led by the late Arakuri, that everybody should leave the forest and people should leave that particular place because of insecurity. And some other conversations that happened during that time. The governor of Bauchi State, I think, he said that can be, there should be movement, there should be freedom of movement, and that some of his cousins, you know, are in Mali, and then there are Fulanis, some of them, and they have the right, you know, to visit their kinsmen. You know, you remember the conversation around that time. Even the AGF at that time, Malami, you know, Abubakar Malami, SAN, frowned at some of the decisions of the governors of the Southwest in saying people should leave the forest, especially those bearing Kalashnikovs in the forest. Who are they? They are not just herdsmen. What will an average herdsman be doing with an AK-47 rifle that doesn't come cheap? So in all of these, will it be right? Will it be fair, even as we're critical of the former president, to point every finger at the president? I mean, Muhammadu Buhari, knowing fully well there are leaders in different states who harbored, who spoke in support of these people you tagged as aliens, as foreigners in our land.
Well, you need to understand that when fish rots, the rot starts from the head. It is due to what you will call in Nigeria the body language of President Buhari. That's why people like you're talking about the Bauchi governor, Governor Bala Muhammad.
Yes.
The Bauchi governor is Jarawa by tribe. They are the people who occupy the land around Toro, in between the Jos Toro Bauchi Road. That is Jarawa homeland. He is Jarawa. And yes, he says his mother has a 50% Fulani blood in her. But he was doing that simply because he had problems in the state with some other leaders. So he thought the way for him to get the second term was to now become more Fulani than the Fulani leaders. And you could see that is wrong. Now, I ask you a question. Is it normal? Because what he was talking about was also what Senator Barrow was talking about, the West African Protocol on Free Movement of Goods and Services. Does that protocol allow people to bring AK-47 into Nigeria? If they brought the AK-47 to Nigeria, does it allow them to form militias that will now start sacking Nigerian farmers, taking their villages, their farmlands, and then their homes? I ask again, is that in line with Nigerian law? Yes, those are the words of such leaders who thought they wanted to help Buhari, because why? Buhari wasn't sincere in handling that problem. Don't forget, we have had this problem before in 1974, when people like Gilbert Shagiri, them came to Nigeria, 74, when Israel occupied East Lebanon. So that time, General Michel Ayoun made contact with the Gowon administration that agreed to bring the Lebanese, quarter them in Kano, in Apapa, and other places in Nigeria as refugees. Instead of Buhari to accept that these are refugees so that we can deal with it the way we can, honestly, no. He started lying that they were Nigerians. He wanted grazing reserve. Nigerians refused to give grazing reserve. He said cow colony. We said no. He said National Livestock Development Program to be headed by Osibanjo and then the governors. Why? Under the Land Use Act, the governors are in charge of the land. But after the 2019 election, before government was formed, we now saw a PAMSEC giving out LPOs for Ruga. That was how everybody ran away, and that thing ended. Buhari went on to bring other schemes like grazing routes. We said no. He said the water bill, which was a consolidation of underground and surface water, which Senator Akpabio pursued very much at the Senate, and then afterwards they came to arrest him, and before you knew, he crossed over to the APC. Now, this is what I'm saying. These things had long history of Buhari trying to get land. He couldn't get that land. That was why they now resorted to using militiamen to commit industrial scale ethnic cleansing. And I was screaming then, this is going to cause us food security problems. Today, that food security problem has come. You can see how much tomatoes are. Apart from tomatoes, look at other parts of foodstuff. Because why? Our farmers are not allowed into the farms. Our farmers cannot even harvest their crops. How can we allow foreign militia? I've been reading what Bello Turji has been saying as to the reasons why they started reacting and fighting the Hausa Yansakai militia people. But I don't believe all that. If not for the government's encouragement and government support, I do not think that those ethnic cleansing actions would have proceeded the way it has been. Today, we have now seen we cannot even feed ourselves. Right. Not that we don't have the land, we do, but our farmers are not allowed into their farms. When you plant corn, somebody will come from nowhere. And let me tell you one truth. The historically local headsmen in Nigeria don't do these things. They don't kill our farmers. It is those who came outside who now thought the only way they can get the land, which we refuse to give Buhari through the legislature, is to use this violence. And that's why I'm saying, let President Tinubu take steps to restore those people back to their farmland if we are to arrest this food insecurity problem that we're having now. Right, it's not going to be solved with rhetoric. It will be solved with actions. Let the farmers be put back to their farmlands. Let them go back to their villages. What is Tinubu waiting for? Does he want us to have a national conference to remind him that the farmers need to be secured for us to be able to be assured
if I'm
that
important,
we will have
doctor,
tomatoes come.
yes.
Why are people now resorting to things like cabbages and watermelon instead of using tomato? Because of this crisis of food insecurity.
Right.
That's why I'm putting my voice to it.
Yeah, and you know, I've always, just like I said, you were critical of the former president and what went down under him. But you know, you used some very strong words like ethnic cleansing, like land grabbing, and you have repeatedly mentioned former President Buhari, and you know he's not here to defend himself. And you know what they say: he who alleges must prove. These are very strong indictment, by the way. But to just push it back a bit to that Obono-Obla'S interview on that Micon podcast, let's look at it. He said another one is the case of a senator who was then in his sitting status and later became the president of the Senate. I found a story in the Panama Papers which stated that he had property in offshore islands. I didn't have the power to investigate him because it was overseas. So I went to the DG, NIA, and sought his help to work together. He went for that to say they conducted an investigation and sent the report to me. The report confirmed that the senator has over 200 million pounds worth of property in the offshore islands. I sent a copy to the president and one to the attorney general. Till today, nothing happened. Now, speaking, one name that I've that came up in that interview, doctor, repeatedly was the then AGF Abubakar Malami, who he said, according to Obono-Obla'S, told his wife that he is very powerful, one of the most powerful in that government, and said nothing will happen, and in fact mocked him at the work he was doing at some point, and say he was very powerful, talking about the AGF. And now there was another accusation that fingered the late Chief of Staff Abba Kyari, and many persons will say these are people. Abba Kyari is not here to defend himself. AGF Malami, former AGF, is not in power again, although he's still alive. Many persons will say the words of Obono-Obla'S, shouldn't we investigate it as well? Because he is a single person's narrative. It's a single person's story. Should we run to the bank, or all he's saying are things that we already know?
Well, it's not a single person narrative. It is a revelation of what happened in the administration. Don't forget, government is a continuum. So all we can do right now is actually to go and investigate what the gentleman has said to find out if it is true. Let us go and investigate. This is Nigeria. It's not very far. What he has said, he said it in open public space. Let the government interrogate. If the government has the political will, this is exactly what I'm saying. Now that we're bringing these things out, if you say, okay, that happened in that administration, it is not bad. It is not time bad. You can investigate. You can ask these questions. You can bring up these files. You can ask the gentleman, can we have a copy of the file, the papers that were minuted to, with which you made this request, so that we can now continue from where you stopped, or we can continue from where they did not continue from. These are very easy things to do. So let's not overlabor this issue. Ask him to get the documents and then put people back on the beat and let us interrogate his words and look if those vehicles still exist. Look if the person who took these vehicles are still there. Check if maybe these vehicles actually are imported by people in government by using their connection in government to perpetrate such fraudulent activities, and we will be able to trace them. It is not rocket science. We can do these things, just as I'm talking about this now and claiming that if you do not take efforts to restore confidence in the villages and the farmlands, farmers wouldn't be able to go back to their farmlands and their villages and their homes. Let us do that. Nothing is damaged by the limitation laws. No. Let us go back to interrogate these things, and if they are true, take the farmers back to their homeland.
Kindly let me butt in here.
Put them back.
Yes, before my colleague will come in. The APC as a party, All Progressives Congress, have been in charge now at the center for at least 9 years, 8 years of Muhammadu Buhari, more than a year now of President Tinubu. And you know, just like I said in my introductions, when President Tinubu, Muhammadu Buhari was coming, you know, many persons believed in their own right that he is a righteous person. You know, he has been blameless. These are some of the adjectives used around him. He's a former, military general who will fight tooth and nail to rescue the country from insecurity, as we saw under President Goodluck Jonathan. And then he was not going to steal. The body language will be there. Everybody that worked with him, they're going to be clean people. He will show them what is right. But 8 years after, your guess is as good as mine. This is the 1 year after President Tinubu has taken over now. We've had some of what has happened. So the 9 years of APC, will you say anti-corruption fight in our nation, is it real or just a mere ruse, just as a tool to get into power, knowing fully well what happened under Buhari and what we are hearing and the 1 year of Bola Ahmed Tinubu? APC as a party, are they really ready to do anything?
Well, if you take the words of President Tinubu, he said he joined President Buhari and other people to build a coalition. And when Buhari came to power, he trashed, Tinubu's wife said, Buhari trashed President Tinubu. And you know what that meant, to be trashed. Don't forget, President Tinubu didn't become president because they wanted him to be. No, he became because he used his resources to defeat President Buhari at the Eagle Square. And that's what the truth is.
But he has always been the national leader of the party.
Well, that is the party primaries, and he used his resources to defeat, because President Buhari's candidate was Ahmed Lawal, the gentleman you mentioned now. But President Tinubu, in his ways, as a man of the street, used resources to defeat Buhari, and the same Ahmed Mallah you're talking about. That didn't stop there. Don't also forget, as we went to the election, President Buhari and his cohorts at the villa were actually in support of Atiku Abubakar. What caused them to give it to Tinubu was because the exit poll, which they didn't believe, saw Peter Obi winning a lot of places, and they said no, they stopped it. And then when we say, why did you stop it? They said glitch. Even though we know there were no glitch, but for the sake of the peace of the country, they still handed it over to a sultanate. Why? Because of fear of a replay of Nadeko. Because when the Nadeko evil, which they saw, was as a consequence of a sultanate, Abiola win an election, but they took it and gave the advantage to a northerner who is Abacha. And that was how Nadeko came together, and they didn't want that. That was why they now said, since it's the sultanate thing, find another sultanate. And that's how they got President Tinubu. So thank God that President Tinubu has become his own man. But what we are asking is, you are president, and no matter the circumstances, we now support you and we are with you. Seize the opportunity and do those things that you would have done as a free man. And that's why we're now looking at him in his preachments about reforms, guided devolution of power to the regions, as we're hearing, that we support. And for that, I will work to make sure I explain to those who listen to me about the beauty of such coded devolution of powers to the federated regions. And of course, restructuring. We all support that. So I'm saying this for you to understand how we came to where we are right now. I don't believe that Tinubu should be afraid of anybody. I want him to man up, as they would say, seize the opportunity and do the right thing. Go into the 2014 confab. Look at those things that we have done in our history. Why? No society runs away from its history. It embraces its history, corrects the flaws, and moves on. Let President Tinubu embrace the historical confab of 2014. Let him correct the flaws that could be in it, and then move on with what we can move to create a better country. What we have today is not working. And I enjoin all Nigerians to support Tinubu in his quest to restructure the superstructure of governance in Nigeria away from what the soldiers had made a mess of it since after the Civil War. So I don't think we should replace the previous soldier triumphalism with Yoruba triumphalism. No, we should now create a country that is seen to be everywhere. And I'm also calling on Tinubu to release Nnamdi Kanu, since he has released Bello Bodejo, who left his state, Bauchi State, and went to Nasarawa State to organize an ethnic militia for the intentions of going to take over land in Benue State. So let him release Nnamdi Kanu. I am saying that. I am begging him. I thank President Obasanjo for his work. I thank Governor Fayose for his voice. I thank everybody to put their voice. Let us have peace in this country. There is no reason to continue to hold Nnamdi Kanu in detention. Let him be free. Igboho is free. Bello Bodejo is free. Nnamdi Kanu should also be free.
I'm sure those are the arms of affairs listening to your call at this time. But, you know, while you were speaking there, you made it look like Nadeko was a tribal thing. You said it was because Abiola didn't come in 1993 and the power was given to a Northerner. That was what brought about the Nadeko. But we know that the Nadeko is all about the fight for democracy. It's called the National Democracy Coalition, Nadeko. So, you know, I just thought to put that out there when you said they gave the presidency back to the South and didn't allow Ahmed Lawan because they did not want a repeat of what happened in 1994, talking about Nadeko. So I just wanted to put that out plain. Nadeko was more about, you know, a democratic coalition, people coming together, Democrats, civil society organization to form that coalition to fight for democracy against the military. But then, away from that, Dr. Katch, now, we've had different probes from different successive government. I mean, the Jonathan administration set up a panel to probe Stella Odua's 255 million naira armored vehicle. A three-man panel was set up at the time in 2013. Then we also had the panel set up by Muhammadu Buhari, the Special Presidential Investigative Panel chaired by Chief Obono-Obla'S. And now, also during the Tinubu administration, we've also had, you know, panels set up. Chief of them is the one set up the investigation by Jimo Bassey to probe the CBN. Now, how do you think, these are just curative measures like cure, but how do you think we can prevent these? How do you think Nigerians can actually demand accountability and transparency from their leaders? Because if we have leaders that are accountable and transparent in their dealings, then we may not have a need for a probe or an investigative panel. How do you think Nigerians can demand this from their leaders?
Well, a correction before we move on. Nadeko was not an ethnic front. It was a Nigerian platform. Exactly. I myself was also a member of Nadeko. That time I lived in Ikeja. I remember working with Mr. Saro Naiwu. We were all there as foot soldiers of Nadeko. So I was only trying to give you the background of why they did not, after the election, write the result to favor Atiku Abubakar. It's not, that's why I'm just putting it to you. Okay. Now you're asking, how do we do this? We must continue to put our voice. We must continue to speak up. We must continue to tell truth to power. We must not be gagged by the MBC or allow them to gag us. We must tell the president what the truth is to guide him to do the right thing. We must tell him not to allow a reputation in Nigeria of what we're seeing currently in Kenya. And the only way to not allow that to happen here is to do the right thing. Don't allow the youth to become frustrated before you start doing things. Do the right thing. And that's why I'm saying right now, he is not seen, and I repeat, President Tinubu is not yet seen by Nigerians to be fighting corruption in a robust manner. The quality of corruption that occurred, the quantum of corruption that was perpetrated under the Buhari administration should be fought robustly. It wasn't just financial corruption, as I said. Ribadu says so, that the country was bankrupted. And I'm telling you, the bankrupting was there was security bankrupting, there was financial bankrupting, there was sociological bankrupting brought about by Buhari's weaponization of nepotism.
Dr. Katch, is this not the same script being played that was played by the Muhammadu Buhari's administration? When Buhari came in, there was this, oh, we met a very bad economy, the nation is at a precipice as it is, you know, the corruption under Jonathan is unrivaled. And these are the same things we are hearing during the Tinubu administration, putting blame games on the past administration, even though it was the same party. So is this really, transparent? Are they really honest? That's the word. Are they really honest with what they are saying? Or is the same script being played by leaders just to gain time from the people?
As you have heard from the confession of Governor FEMI, he said their rhetorics against the Goodluck administration, most of it were just politics. Like when they went on the street to protest against Goodluck's removal of subsidy, that they were simply not being sincere. They were doing politics. That's not my word. That's a confession from Governor FEMI. So I can tell you, not all those things you heard about the Jonathan administration are true, because Buhari himself went on to do what Jonathan never did. Jonathan never engaged. Yes, I agree. There was reckless financial corruption under the Jonathan administration, but there was no weaponization of nepotism against anybody. Buhari weaponized nepotism against Igbos, and we should not fail to do that. Chief Clark said it the other day that he tried all he could do to subjugate the Southeast, but then it failed. And that's what I was telling somebody yesterday morning, that it is really wonderful that after 8 years of Buhari's presidency, Igbos are still part of Nigeria. But that's not what it is. You know, I liken what happened to Nigeria to the poem that said, when they came for the Jews, I did not react because I wasn't a Jew. When they came for the comrades who were the part of the workers protesting, I didn't react because I was not part of the workers who were protesting. But when they came for me, there was no one else who could speak for me. That's what Buhari did. He started his rhetorics with 5%. And before you knew it, 5% decreased to 95, 97% of the country became victims of his weaponization of nepotism. And that's why I said they are not the same. No, you are wrong. Goodluck administration was not that as Buhari. Buhari's own was they set on to destroy the country. The CPC faction of the party seized the country and trashed every other person who was part of it. And what did you do? That even now is the reason why today, effectively, Nigeria is a one-party state.
All right,
the
Doctor,
PDP is dead.
Yeah.
My party is gone.
All right.
It doesn't exist because of the same nepotism.
All right, Doctor, quickly, you said something now that the CPC faction of the APC were in power, and they did, you know, what you said they've done under President Muhammadu Buhari, former President Muhammadu Buhari. Now, using your word that the CPC were in charge now, I think it's safe to say the ACN caucus, you know, are largely the ones in party now with the president being from that particular bloc, and some of the boys of the ACN are in charge right now. Will you say they are doing better? Are they doing any better than what we are seeing right now? The profligacy, you know, financial, I don't want to say recklessness, with everything that they need, they keep getting things that are not needed, that we can't afford. They keep getting from the executive to the legislature, you know, they keep having these things, telling the people that the policies we have taken, removal of subsidy, and, you know, the exchange rate, the floating of the naira, is for the betterment of the people. Prices of things have skyrocketed more than 1,000% in some cases, telling the people that better days are ahead, you know, but whatever they have, they keep getting. We are hearing that very soon there might be a purchase need for there is a need, at least that's what the House of Reps committee said, for the purchase of new aircraft for the president. They've been buying SUVs for themselves, you know, refurbishing homes, which many says they are unnecessary. Are they doing better with the 1 year of Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration, with the boys in charge, with the ministers that we have now, with the leadership of the National Assembly? Are you impressed? How are they better Now the boys under Muhammadu Buhari.
They are not better, and that's why we're having this discussion. We are asking them, do not continue from where Buhari stopped to perpetrate the nepotism, the pornography that is not acceptable, the spending on yourselves for luxury when actually the country is in dire straits financially. Your actions should show that you understand that the country currently is financially and economically challenged. I tell you, they are not doing much better. But what we will have to do now is better because we're able to criticize, and they also look at us and try to react by trying to defend themselves or do something else, or even change those things. That's why I told you, when we commended Tinubu for his actions in sacking the corrupt women at the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, that was simply to encourage him to do more. But suddenly, he seems to have relapsed.
Oh.
But we cannot stop. We must continue to raise our voice. We must continue to do this until we know that the right things are done. That's the beauty about the democracy, that we have this space, that we can criticize, that we can tell him, don't. Even though I support his government, we can criticize him so that those places where he is doing the thing wrong, I want him to do better, so that when it is better, it's good for me, it's good for the Nigerians. I repeat, he is not doing much better in terms of the corruption when compared to Buhari, and that's why we're raising our voices for him to change his ways and walk away from the Buhari's ostentatious behaviors that were marked by unbridled corruption.
All right, thank you so very much, Dr. KATCH ONONOJU, for your take, your submission, your thoughts, lending your voice to the anti-corruption call. We appreciate you, Dr. KATCH ONONOJU, Director General, the Heritage Center. Have yourself a good day, sir.
I thank you very much for having me, and of course for allowing me to share time with your audience.
Our pleasure.
All right. That's a very insightful, deep and passionate conversation there with Dr. KATCH ONONOJU. And, you know, like he said, we should continue to lend our voices, to call out our leaders when they are not doing the right thing. You can watch a recap of this particular edition on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and X at Western Spring Television. Definitely would like to hear feedback from you on this particular conversation. Femi, we have to go.
Yes, we have. Yeah.
All right, my name is EVELYN OHIOLEI. We'll make a return tomorrow for another interesting edition of Morning Spring. Until then, continue to talk to your leaders, call them out when you should. And remember what Chief Obafemi Awolowo said, that the children of the poor that you refuse to train today will definitely haunt your children in the future. So this is the time for us to actually come together as one, leaving ethnicity, tribalism, and religious sentiment aside, and work for the Nigeria project.
Right. I agree. Absolutely. 100%. May Nigeria prosper during that time and beyond. Femi Ojo is my name. We'll be back, God willing, tomorrow. Have for yourself a very, very productive day. Bye-bye.